Keisha? Is that really you after all this time?
I just needed you to see him, just once. His name is Micah. He deserves to know his father.
Why didn't you tell me sooner? I deserve to know.
The morning air outside Horizon Tower was cold enough to freeze breath into fog. At 5:40 a.m., before the sun had touched the glass towers of Empire City, a security guard walking his usual round stopped mid-step at the marble entrance. A woman was curled against the cold stone, a small boy asleep in her arms, her coat pulled around him like the only shelter she had left. Her shoes were cracked at the seams. Her lips were pale from the cold. She had been sitting there since midnight, waiting for a man who did not know she still existed. His name was David Cho, chief executive of the Cho Horizon Group, one of the richest men in Empire City. And in exactly 11 minutes, his car would pull up to that same entrance, and nothing in his carefully controlled life would ever look the same again. If you believe some promises are never really forgotten, subscribe now and comment the city you are watching from tonight. This story is only getting started. Ma'am, you can't sleep here. The guard's radio crackled against his shoulder. I need you to move. Keisha Barnett opened her eyes, disoriented, and pulled her son closer against her chest. Just 5 more minutes, she whispered, her voice raw. Please. He's still sleeping. 2 more guards arrived, and one reached for his radio to report a trespasser at the front entrance, as if a mother and a child were a problem to be filed away. A man in an expensive coat stepped around her without looking down, the way people avoid something they would rather not see. A woman nearby lifted her phone to record, more curious than kind. A well-dressed man muttered, loud enough for her to hear, that people like her made the sidewalk look bad before the tourists arrived. Keisha did not answer him. She had learned a long time ago that dignity was not something she owed to strangers who had already decided not to see her. She lowered her head, not from shame, but to shield her son's eyes from the disgust on every face around them. She had promised herself she would never let him see the world look at them this way. This morning she had run out of other options. Then a black car slowed and stopped at the curb. The driver's door opened first, then the passenger door. David Cho stepped out 10 minutes earlier than his schedule allowed, a phone still pressed to his ear, mid-sentence to someone he suddenly forgot he was speaking to. He saw the boy first. Something about the small hand resting against the sleeping woman's collarbone made him stop walking entirely. Then he saw what hung from a thin chain around the child's neck. A small silver key. His hand rose instinctively to his own collar, where an identical key still rested against his chest, hidden beneath his shirt 5 years later, after he had told himself 100 times that it meant nothing anymore. Sir, we're handling it, the lead guard said, already reaching for Keisha's arm. Don't touch her. David's voice was quiet, but it stopped every person on that sidewalk at once. He crouched down slowly, the way a man moves when he does not trust his own hands. Keisha. She flinched at the sound of her own name, as if it belonged to someone she used to be a long time ago. Around them, the lobby staff had gathered near the glass doors, whispering behind their hands, watching a woman in a worn coat kneel beside the most powerful man in the building. Keisha felt every eye on her thin shoes, her tired face, the son she refused to let go of. David, I wasn't going to come inside, she said. I just needed. Her voice cracked in the middle of the sentence. I just needed you to see him. Just once. That's all I came for. The boy stirred, blinked up at the stranger crouched in front of him, and asked in the plain honesty only a 4-year-old carries, Are you the man in Mommy's picture? The elevator ride to the top floor felt endless. Keisha watched 42 floors light up one by one, aware of every glance at her worn coat, aware of Micah's small hand wrapped around hers instead of a stranger's shoulder for the first time all morning. A junior staffer stepped back to let them pass, whispering something behind a clipboard to the woman beside her. Keisha did not need to hear the words to understand the look on both their faces. She had worn that same look herself once, years ago, back when she still worked banquet floors just like this one, wondering privately about the kind of woman who could ever belong in an office at the very top. Upstairs, in an office with floor-to-ceiling glass and a view of a city Keisha used to dream about from a cramped studio apartment, David finally let himself ask the question he had buried for 5 years. Why did you disappear, Keisha? I called. I went to your apartment twice. Your number was disconnected within a week. For a moment neither of them spoke, and the silence pulled both of them back to a rooftop 5 years earlier, the summer before everything fell apart, when David had knelt on cracked concrete under string lights and pressed a small silver key into her palm. It doesn't open anything, he had told her then, laughing at himself. It's just so you always have proof that I meant it. Always. It had been her 24th birthday, the only gift either of them could really afford that summer, and somehow it had felt like more than anything money could buy. She had worn that key every day after that, through every shift at the hotel where they met, through every stolen weekend, until the day his calls simply stopped coming. Keisha's hands were shaking now around a cup of coffee she was not drinking. I did not disconnect anything, David. I never got a single call from you. Not one. That's not possible, he said. I spoke to your mother myself. She told me you took a payment and left the city. She told me you did not want to be found, that you'd moved on. Keisha went very still. My mother has been gone for 3 years, David, and I have never taken a cent from anyone in my life. The truth in this story is about to get a lot bigger than anyone in that room is ready for. Hit subscribe now so you do not miss what happens next. The silence in that office had weight to it. David walked to the window, jaw tight, replaying 5 years of certainty that had just cracked straight down the middle. If you never spoke to my mother, he said slowly, then who did I actually talk to that night? Keisha looked past him, toward the small boy now curled asleep on the office couch under a blanket someone had quietly brought in. David, that's Micah. He turned 4 in March. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded paper, soft at the edges from being carried and unfolded too many times to count. A paternity result already tested weeks ago at a clinic across town from her apartment, already signed, kept for a day. She never thought she would find the courage to use it. I did not come here for money, she said. I came because he asked me last week why he doesn't have a dad like the other kids at his school, and I could not lie to him one more time. Her eyes drifted to the key resting against David's collar, now visible where his top button had come undone. You kept yours, she said quietly. I gave him mine. I put it on a shorter chain when he turned 2, so he would always carry a piece of his father, even if he never got to have one. In the doorway, David's longtime assistant, Grace Whitfield, stood frozen, a stack of morning files forgotten in her hands. She had worked for the Cho family for 15 years, had watched David grow from a determined young heir into the guarded man he was now, and she had liked Keisha from the very first week she worked the events floor downstairs. She also knew exactly whose voice Keisha had actually spoken to 5 years ago, because she was the one who had been ordered to place that call. Grace. David's voice dropped low, careful. Tell me you don't know anything about this. Grace opened her mouth, then closed it again, and her silence answered the question louder than any words could have. I have a son, David said quietly, almost to himself, staring at the small boy sleeping 12 feet away. I have a son, and I let someone convince me he chose to be a stranger to me. He turned to face Keisha, and the composure that every boardroom in Empire City feared was completely gone. I grew up in a house where my mother decided who was worthy of us and who wasn't. I told myself I would never let her choose for me again. He thought of every birthday his mother had rearranged around board meetings, every dinner he had eaten alone with a nanny while she called it protecting the family legacy. He had promised himself as a boy that he would never make anyone feel as small as she had made him feel. And somehow I still let her take the 2 people who mattered most, without even realizing what I had lost. Keisha wiped her face with the back of her hand, refusing to let herself fully break in front of him. I did not come here to hear sorry, David. I came here so my son could stop wondering if he was a mistake. I raised him through 2 jobs and a shelter for 4 months last winter, and I never once told him his father did not want him, because I did not know if that was even true. Now I do. The office door opened without a knock. Eleanor Cho walked in wearing the same composed authority she had used to end Keisha's entire life 5 years earlier. Her eyes moved from David to Keisha, to the sleeping child on the couch, and did not soften even once. David, whatever this woman has told you, I suggest we discuss it privately. This is not a conversation for the office, and certainly not before the merger vote. This is my son, Mother. Eleanor's expression barely shifted. We don't know that yet. And even if it were true, a woman like this does not simply appear after 5 years without wanting something. Look at her, David. Sleeping on a sidewalk with a child is not a coincidence. It's a strategy. Keisha stood up slowly, steadier than she felt. I have worked every single day since the moment you had me disappear, Mrs. Cho. I have never once needed a strategy to survive. I needed the truth. I did not vanish, Mrs. Cho. I was erased. And I think you know exactly who erased me because you were standing right where you are standing now when you did it. The biggest secret in this entire story is about to come out. Comment the city you are watching from and stay close because everything is about to change. Grace stepped forward and set the files down on the desk like she was finally setting down 5 years of guilt she had carried alone. I can't do this anymore, Mrs. Cho. She turned to David, her voice unsteady. Your mother had me place that call to Keisha's apartment the week after you two argued about the merger dinner. I told her, in your mother's exact words, that you had moved on and did not want complications before the deal closed. Mrs. Cho had a monthly payment wired to an account in Keisha's name for 5 years, to keep her quiet and keep her away. And I kept every letter Keisha ever tried to send you after that. I could not bring myself to destroy them. I hid them in my desk drawer, telling myself I would find the courage to hand them to you one day. Grace pulled a single folded page from inside her blazer. The ink softened from being read too many times. I kept this one on purpose, she said quietly, and read a few lines aloud, Keisha's own handwriting from 4 years earlier, asking only for one phone call, one chance to explain, promising she wanted nothing from him but the truth for her son. David listened to his own name written in a letter he had never once been allowed to receive, and something in his chest broke open completely. David turned to his mother, something in his face closing like a door shutting for good. Show me the account, he said. Show me every single payment right now. When the numbers finally loaded onto the screen, the room went quiet in a very different way. 61 months of deposits. Every one of them untouched, sitting exactly where it had landed, down to the very last cent. Keisha had never taken a single dollar of it. I never even opened that account, Keisha said, her voice finally breaking completely. I did not want your money, Mrs. Cho. I wanted him to know his son existed. That is all I ever wanted, from the very beginning. Eleanor's composure finally cracked down the middle. I was protecting this family's name. You were not protecting anything, David said. You stole 4 years of my son's life from me. You lied to the only woman I have ever loved and let her believe I abandoned her and our child in a shelter. He looked toward the small crowd of board members now gathering near the doorway, drawn in by the raised voices. Effective today, my mother no longer speaks for this family, in this building or anywhere near my son's life. That decision is final. Eleanor looked at the son who once needed her approval for everything, and found standing in front of her a man who no longer did. She turned and walked out without another word, her heels echoing down a hallway that no longer belonged to her the way it once had. If you believe the truth always finds its way into daylight, comment the word truth below, and let's see how many of us actually agree before this story ends. That evening, David sat on the floor of his own living room, something he had not done in years, stacking wooden blocks with a boy who shared his eyes and, it turned out, his stubborn patience. Micah looked up at him with the same plain honesty from that cold morning. Are you gonna stay? David did not answer right away. He wanted the answer to mean something real. Every day that I can, he said. And on the days I can't, I will still call every single time. I promise you that. From the doorway, Keisha watched, arms crossed, guarded but no longer carrying the weight alone the way she had for 5 long years. David reached up and unclasped the thin chain from around his own neck, then walked over and placed his silver key gently into her hand, closing her fingers around it. I never took mine off either, he said quietly. Not once in 5 years. I just didn't understand why until this morning. Keisha looked down at the small key in her palm, then at her son laughing at something on the rug, safe, warm, and no longer sleeping outside anyone's door. I know sorry doesn't undo 5 years, David added. But I am asking for the chance to earn back every one of them. Slowly, however long it takes. Keisha closed her hand around the key. Slowly, she said softly. I can do. 6 months later, Empire City had changed for all 3 of them. Micah started kindergarten with his father's hand wrapped around one of his and his mother's around the other, both of them walking him through the front doors together on his very first day. David still worked long hours, but every evening at 6 without exception, he was home on the living room floor, one more block tower rising between him and his son. Keisha wore the silver key on a new chain, one that had never once needed hiding. She had learned her strength from years of surviving completely alone. She never once imagined she would also get to keep her happy ending. Some secrets are kept to protect power. But love, the real kind, always finds its way back to the person it belongs to. Even after 5 years. Even after every lie built to bury it for good. Keisha never asked to be believed. She only asked to be seen. And in the end, that was enough to change everything for her, for David, and for a little boy who finally got to stop wondering. If this story moved you even a little, that is exactly why we tell them here on Empire City Romance Stories. Subscribe so you never miss the next one. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from tonight. Hit that like button, and turn on notifications so you are the first to know the moment our next story goes live. We will see you in the next one.